Imagine being able to focus deeply, crush distractions, and unlock your true potential. This audiobook reveals how a simple dopamine detox can rewire your brain for unparalleled productivity and focus. Ready to break free from distractions? Your journey starts now. Introduction. You've felt it before. The urge to check your phone the moment it buzzes, to scroll through your feed just to see what's happening in the world, to give in to that momentary rush of pleasure from a new notification. It's addictive, isn't it? But here's the problem. Every time you give in to these distractions, you're rewiring your brain. A tiny burst of dopamine, your brain's feel-good chemical, convinces you that this is what you need, that this is what's important right now. And while it might feel good in the moment, it's also slowly robbing you of your ability to focus and do the kind of deep, meaningful work that leads to true productivity and fulfillment. Dopamine is both a tool and a trap. It's the very thing that motivates us to achieve our goals, that fuels our creativity, and gives us pleasure. It's a powerful force, but in today's hyper-connected world, dopamine has become a weapon used against us. With every ping, like, and notification, we're trained to seek instant gratification, hopping from one distraction to the next. The result? We're left feeling unfocused, unproductive, and overwhelmed by the sheer number of tasks demanding our attention. The dopamine trap. How distractions hijack your focus. Every day, we're bombarded by a constant stream of distractions. The phone, the email alerts, the social media updates, they're all designed to trigger dopamine, to create that addictive hit of pleasure no matter how fleeting. While this constant stimulation may seem harmless, it's actually sabotaging our ability to focus and work deeply. Each time you check your phone or respond to a notification, you're giving your brain a temporary dopamine hit, and that feels good. But over time, these small distractions build a cycle that makes it harder and harder to concentrate on tasks that require sustained focus. And this cycle, this craving for more dopamine-driven distractions, is the root cause of our inability to get into deep work, the state where real, meaningful progress is made. Here's the thing. This addiction to distraction isn't just a bad habit. It's a serious problem that impacts every area of our lives. We're so wired to seek instant gratification that we forget how to work without constant rewards. The result? We jump from task to task, never fully immersing ourselves in the work that will move us forward in life. Instead of focusing on long-term goals, we're sucked into a loop of instant dopamine hits, chasing a fleeting sense of satisfaction. This constant state of distraction doesn't just kill your focus, it kills your potential. Without the ability to focus deeply, you're left spinning your wheels, feeling busy but not truly productive. The power of a dopamine detox, rewiring your brain for focus and productivity. So, what's the solution? The answer lies in a dopamine detox, a radical reset that rewires your brain and restores your ability to focus deeply. It's not about eliminating dopamine entirely, but rather about reducing the sources of unnecessary stimulation and reclaiming your attention. A dopamine detox helps you break free from the constant barrage of distractions that hijack your focus and create a craving for instant rewards. By removing the external triggers that feed your dopamine-driven habits, you allow your brain to reset and develop the ability to engage in sustained, meaningful work. But how does this detox work? It's about more than just cutting out social media or limiting your screen time. A true dopamine detox requires you to be intentional about your time, to consciously choose how and when you engage with activities that trigger dopamine. This means creating a balance between work, rest, and play. It means actively seeking out moments of boredom, allowing your mind the space it needs to recharge and reset. As you engage in this detox, you will begin to experience the transformative effects of deep work, improved focus, better productivity, and a sense of accomplishment that comes from working without the constant pull of distractions. By the end of this book, you'll have the tools and strategies to break free from the dopamine trap and start reaping the rewards of deep, focused work. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's about taking the time to detox, to reset your brain, and to engage in the kind of focused, meaningful work that leads to real, lasting success. So, if you're ready to take control of your attention, to reclaim your focus, and to finally make progress on what matters most, this is your moment. Let's dive into the dopamine detox and begin the journey of rewiring your brain for productivity, fulfillment, and success. Chapter 1. Understanding dopamine. In the modern world, distractions are everywhere. Our brains are bombarded with constant streams of notifications, alerts, and instant gratification. From the ping of a new message to the allure of social media, the pull to check our phones, to the satisfying click of the like button, it feels almost impossible to stay focused on any one task for an extended period of time. But what if we told you that all of these distractions have something in common? That they are all deeply rooted in a chemical in our brain called dopamine. Understanding dopamine is the first step in taking back control of your focus and productivity. In this chapter, we're going to explore exactly what dopamine is, how it works, and why it plays such a powerful role in the challenges we face when it comes to maintaining focus and engaging in deep work. What is dopamine? The brain's reward chemical. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, a chemical messenger in the brain that plays a central role in our motivation, reward, and pleasure systems. It's often referred to as the feel-good chemical, and for good reason. It's responsible for the sense of pleasure and satisfaction we get from activities that feel rewarding. Every time we eat something we enjoy, engage in a hobby, receive praise, or even check our social media and see a like on a post, our brain releases dopamine, making us feel good and encouraging us to repeat the behavior. In fact, dopamine isn't just released when we experience pleasure. It's also released when we anticipate pleasure. It's the fuel behind our motivation to pursue rewards, whether those rewards are immediate, like checking your phone, or delayed, like working on a long-term goal. This anticipation of reward is what makes dopamine such a powerful force. The reason dopamine is so important is because it's intimately connected to our behavior. When we experience something rewarding, our brain releases dopamine to signal, "This is good. Keep doing it." This feedback loop drives our habits, both good and bad. Unfortunately, this system can easily be hijacked. In today's world, where instant gratification is just a click away, we often find ourselves constantly chasing that next dopamine hit, from checking social media to consuming junk food, which leaves us unable to focus on tasks that require deep concentration and prolonged effort. But here's the thing. While dopamine is essential for motivation and reward, its role in modern life has become distorted. Our constant exposure to high dopamine stimuli can lead to an overstimulation of the brain's reward system, creating a feedback loop that makes it difficult to focus on activities that require patience and sustained effort. This overstimulation can ultimately lead to feelings of anxiety, restlessness, and a lack of fulfillment, leaving us distracted and disengaged. Dopamine's impact on behavior. The science of motivation. To understand the extent of dopamine's impact on our behavior, let's take a deeper look at how it influences motivation and the way we approach tasks. Dopamine doesn't just govern our feelings of pleasure, it also plays a significant role in decision-making. When we engage in a rewarding activity, dopamine levels rise, and our brains register that as a good experience. This is how we develop habits. But dopamine doesn't stop there. It also governs the anticipation of a reward, making it just as powerful when we think about something pleasurable as when we experience it. In fact, Dopamine is often released in greater quantities when we're anticipating a reward rather than when we receive it. Consider this. Have you ever found yourself scrolling through social media, mindlessly liking photos or posts, and before you know it, hours have passed? This is dopamine at work. With every swipe, like, and comment, your brain is receiving small hits of dopamine, reinforcing the behavior and encouraging you to keep engaging. It feels rewarding, but the satisfaction is fleeting, and you're left wanting more. This is a perfect example of how dopamine-driven behaviors often lead to cycles of short-term pleasure without long-term fulfillment. Over time, this cycle of instant gratification can make it harder to find satisfaction in activities that require delayed gratification, like studying, working on a project, or focusing deeply on a single task. This dopamine-driven cycle creates a paradox. On one hand, we're motivated by the pursuit of rewards, yet on the other hand, we find ourselves stuck in a loop of seeking instant gratification that doesn't allow for the type of sustained focus needed for meaningful, long-term achievements. The constant craving for these instant hits makes it difficult for us to engage in deep work, the kind of focused, meaningful work that leads to mastery and personal growth. Dopamine and addiction. The destructive cycle of overstimulation. One of the most significant challenges of modern life is how easy it is to become addicted to the things that give us a quick dopamine fix. From scrolling through social media to binge-watching TV shows or playing video games for hours, these behaviors can lead to a form of addiction, often without us even realizing it. Dopamine, in this context, behaves in much the same way as it does with addictive substances like drugs or alcohol. The more you get, the more you need to feel the same level of satisfaction, and the harder it becomes to stop. The key to understanding dopamine addiction lies in the way the brain's reward system works. Every time we engage in a behavior that releases dopamine, our brain essentially says, "This is good. Do it again." The more we engage in these behaviors, the more our brain becomes dependent on the dopamine they provide, which leads to a cycle of craving and reward seeking. Over time, the brain can become desensitized to these dopamine hits, meaning that we need increasingly larger doses of stimulation to achieve the same level of satisfaction. This is why what started as a simple habit, checking your phone a few times a day, can escalate into an addiction to social media, or why indulging in junk food can evolve into a compulsion to eat comfort food when stressed or anxious. The effects of dopamine overstimulation aren't limited to addiction. Over time, this cycle can create a type of mental fog, leaving you feeling sluggish, distracted, and disconnected from your goals. You may find it difficult to focus on tasks that require sustained attention, such as working on a project or studying for an exam. The brain's craving for quick, easy rewards often drowns out the desire for deeper, more meaningful activities. As a result, you may struggle with procrastination and find it increasingly difficult to engage in activities that require focus, patience, and effort. But the good news is that just as you can become addicted to distractions and instant rewards, you can also retrain your brain to value deep work and meaningful activities. The first step in this process is understanding how dopamine works and how it drives your behavior. Once you become aware of its influence, you can begin to take control and make choices that support your long-term goals rather than your short-term desires. Dopamine and mental health. A delicate balance. The relationship between dopamine and mental health is complex, and understanding it is essential for addressing issues like anxiety, depression, and stress. When dopamine levels are consistently high due to constant stimulation, it can create a state of mental chaos where the brain becomes overstimulated and the ability to focus or relax diminishes. This overstimulation can lead to feelings of anxiety, restlessness, and a constant need for external validation. In extreme cases, it can even contribute to more severe mental health challenges such as depression and burnout. On the other hand, When dopamine levels are too low, it can leave us feeling apathetic, unmotivated, and disconnected from the things we once found fulfilling. This imbalance between high and low dopamine levels can leave us stuck in a cycle of negative emotions, constantly seeking external sources of stimulation to compensate for what feels like an empty or understimulated mind. It's a delicate balance, and when dopamine is dysregulated, it can significantly impact our overall well-being. The solution to this challenge is not to eliminate dopamine entirely, but rather to recalibrate how we engage with it. By performing a dopamine detox, you allow your brain to reset and regain control over the reward system, enabling you to find pleasure and satisfaction in activities that truly align with your long-term goals, like deep work and personal growth. Over time, this reset can help you build healthier, more sustainable habits that foster not only greater productivity, but also improved mental health and emotional balance. As we move through this book, keep in mind that understanding dopamine isn't about demonizing it or making it the villain. Rather, it's about learning to work with it, not against it. Dopamine is an essential part of our brain's reward system, and when used wisely, it can motivate us to achieve incredible things. However, in today's world of constant distractions and instant gratification, we've lost touch with how to manage our dopamine levels effectively. The first step in reclaiming your ability to focus, do deep work, and live a more fulfilling life is to understand how dopamine works and how it can be harnessed to your advantage. Let's dive deeper into the dopamine detox process, and together, we can begin to reset your brain for success. Chapter 2. The Modern Dopamine Trap. In a world of constant connectivity, information overload, and infinite distractions, it's no wonder that maintaining focus on meaningful, long-term goals has become one of the greatest challenges of modern life. Everywhere we turn, there's something new to grab our attention. Be it the ping of a message, the lure of a viral video, or the irresistible urge to check social media. These distractions are designed to capture our attention, hijack our dopamine systems, and keep us coming back for more. We live in an age of instant gratification, where the pursuit of immediate pleasure has become a powerful force that shapes our behavior, often to our detriment. This chapter explores the modern dopamine trap, the ways in which our daily lives have become filled with distractions that keep us stuck in a cycle of short-term pleasure and constant stimulation, making it increasingly difficult to achieve the deep work and focus that we truly need to succeed. The rise of digital distractions, a world of instant gratification. If you've ever found yourself mindlessly scrolling through your social media feed or spending hours watching videos online, you're not alone. It's become a daily habit for many of us, almost without thinking. Social media platforms, apps, and digital entertainment have mastered the art of creating content that hooks our attention, pulling us into an endless loop of notifications, likes, and updates. But behind the glossy exterior of these platforms lies a powerful force that is manipulating our brain chemistry: dopamine. Every time we check our phones, scroll through our feeds, or engage in an online conversation, our brain releases dopamine, rewarding us for the action and encouraging us to repeat it. This constant stream of positive reinforcement builds a feedback loop that becomes increasingly difficult to break free from. The more we engage with these digital distractions, the more our brain craves the next dopamine hit. But while these instant rewards may feel satisfying in the moment, they come at a steep cost. We become conditioned to expect immediate gratification, which leads to an inability to focus on tasks that require patience, effort, and deep thought. This shift toward instant gratification is not just a result of a personal choice. It's been engineered by tech companies and app developers to keep us hooked. The infinite scroll, the notifications, the recommendations, these are all carefully designed to trigger our dopamine systems and keep us coming back for more. While these platforms are great for staying connected and being entertained, they are also a prime example of how modern technology has hijacked our brains, fostering a culture of distraction that prioritizes the fleeting satisfaction of the moment over the long-term benefits of deep work and sustained focus. This digital world of constant stimulation has created an environment where distractions are not only abundant, but actively encouraged, making it incredibly difficult to focus on tasks that require deep thinking, problem-solving, or creativity. It's important to recognize that this addiction to instant gratification isn't just limited to social media. It's a broader trend that can be seen in the rise of binge-watching television shows, playing video games for hours on end, or even the way we consume news. These behaviors are designed to provide quick bursts of pleasure and entertainment, often to the detriment of our mental health and productivity. The more time we spend engaging in these high dopamine activities, the more we train our brains to expect immediate rewards, making it harder to sit down and engage in more demanding tasks that require deep concentration. We begin to crave the ease and pleasure of low-effort activities, leaving us struggling to maintain focus on work, learning, or personal growth. Instant gratification versus long-term fulfillment, the paradox of modern life. At the heart of the modern dopamine trap is the paradox of instant gratification versus long-term fulfillment. We live in an age where everything is available at the push of a button. Whether it's a meal delivered to our door, a movie streamed directly to our screen, or an endless supply of entertainment available at all hours of the day. The ease of access to these quick pleasures has fundamentally shifted the way we approach our time and attention. Rather than investing in activities that bring long-term fulfillment, like working on a challenging project or pursuing a personal goal, we are conditioned to chase the immediate reward, the instant pleasure, the quick fix. This shift has profound implications for our ability to focus and accomplish meaningful work. In the past, success in any area of life required patience, persistence, and sustained effort. Whether it was mastering a skill, building a career, or developing a relationship, the rewards were often delayed, requiring consistent effort over time. But today, the culture of instant gratification has made it increasingly difficult for us to engage in these long-term pursuits. We are trained to expect rewards immediately, and when the payoff isn't instant, it can feel frustrating, overwhelming, and even discouraging. We begin to view work, learning, and personal growth as burdensome tasks, not rewarding journeys. In essence, the dopamine-driven cycle of instant gratification creates a cognitive dissonance between what we want in the moment and what we truly need for long-term happiness and fulfillment. The problem with this dopamine-driven cycle is that the quick fixes we chase don't lead to lasting satisfaction. Yes, checking your phone for messages or watching a funny video may provide a brief moment of pleasure, but those moments are fleeting, and they rarely contribute to any lasting sense of accomplishment or happiness. In fact, they often leave us feeling drained, distracted, and dissatisfied. We may have spent hours on our phones or watching TV, but we have little to show for it in terms of personal growth, productivity, or progress toward our goals. Over time, this pattern can erode our sense of fulfillment, leaving us feeling disconnected from our deeper aspirations and ambitions. To break free from this cycle, we need to shift our focus away from the immediate gratification of distractions and instead prioritize activities that require patience, persistence, and deep engagement. This doesn't mean we should eliminate all sources of dopamine from our lives. After all, pleasure and enjoyment are important aspects of life, but it does mean learning to balance the pursuit of short-term rewards with the long-term fulfillment that comes from deep work, personal growth, and meaningful accomplishments. By understanding the paradox of instant gratification versus long-term fulfillment, we can begin to realign our attention and energy toward the things that truly matter. How dopamine drives unproductive habits, the feedback loop of distraction. The modern world is designed to keep us distracted, and nowhere is this more apparent than in the way our brains respond to dopamine. Every time we engage in a behavior that releases dopamine, whether it's checking our phone, eating junk food, or indulging in a short burst of entertainment, our brain is rewarded with a small hit of pleasure. This reward reinforces the behavior, creating a feedback loop that encourages us to repeat it. Over time, this feedback loop becomes ingrained in our daily lives, making it increasingly difficult to break free from these unproductive habits. The reason these habits are so difficult to overcome is due to the way dopamine shapes our brain's wiring. Dopamine doesn't just make us feel good in the moment. It also strengthens the neural pathways associated with the behavior that caused the release. In other words, every time we check our phone or engage in a pleasurable activity, we are effectively reinforcing the habit, making it easier and more automatic to repeat. This is why habits like mindlessly scrolling through social media or watching TV for hours on end can feel so difficult to break. The more we engage in these behaviors, the more our brain craves them, creating a cycle of distraction that can leave us feeling unproductive and overwhelmed. But the problem with these unproductive habits is that they don't lead to any meaningful outcomes. While they may provide short-term pleasure, they rarely contribute to long-term success or personal growth. In fact, they often work against our goals, making it harder to stay focused, productive, and engaged in activities that require sustained effort. The dopamine-driven feedback loop of distraction keeps us stuck in a cycle of immediate gratification, preventing us from achieving the deep work and meaningful progress we truly desire. To break free from this cycle, we need to become more aware of the ways in which dopamine is driving our habits. By recognizing the feedback loop that exists between our behaviors, our brain's reward system, and the release of dopamine, we can begin to make more intentional choices about how we spend our time and attention. This awareness is the first step in reclaiming control over our focus and productivity. Rather than allowing our dopamine-driven impulses to dictate our actions, we can start to prioritize activities that align with our long-term goals, creating new feedback loops that support deep work, personal growth, and lasting fulfillment. As we explore the concept of the dopamine detox, it's important to remember that the modern dopamine trap is not something we have to accept passively. While our environment may be filled with distractions, we have the power to break free from these cycles of instant gratification and rewire our brains for deeper focus, more meaningful work, and long-term fulfillment. By understanding the ways in which dopamine drives our behavior and acknowledging the role it plays in shaping our habits, we can begin to take proactive steps to regain control over our attention and our lives. This is the first step toward creating a life that prioritizes deep work, personal growth, and a sense of fulfillment that comes from within, not from the fleeting pleasures of external distractions. Chapter 3: The Science of Deep Work. In the modern age, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the constant barrage of information and distractions. We're encouraged, often unconsciously, to seek out instant gratification rather than to embrace the hard work, focus, and patience that are necessary for success. Yet, there is one skill that has been proven to unlock incredible potential and drive long-term success, and that skill is deep work. But what exactly is deep work, and why does it seem so elusive in our highly distracted world? Deep work is the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. It's a state of concentration so intense that it allows you to push the limits of your cognitive abilities, creating an environment where you can produce high-quality work in less time. This kind of focused work is incredibly valuable in a world full of distractions, and it has become one of the most important skills anyone can cultivate. In this chapter, we will dive into the science behind deep work, explore its immense benefits, and begin to understand why it's so difficult to achieve in today's society, and most importantly, how we can train our brains to access this state of profound focus. What is deep work? Defining focused, undistracted effort. Deep work is not just about spending more hours in front of your computer or working harder. It's about working smarter by channeling your energy and focus toward tasks that require significant cognitive effort and creativity. In contrast to shallow work, activities that are easy, repetitive, and often low stakes, deep work requires a mental effort that pushes the boundaries of your intellectual capacity. Deep work can take many forms: writing an in-depth report, solving a complex problem, creating art, developing software, or studying for a crucial exam. What all of these activities have in common is that they demand undivided attention and long periods of focus without distraction. The key difference between deep work and shallow work is the level of cognitive engagement. Shallow work, like checking emails, scrolling through social media, or attending meetings, doesn't require significant mental effort. These are tasks that can be done passively, almost mindlessly, and often serve as distractions from the things that truly matter. On the other hand, deep work requires that you immerse yourself fully in the task at hand. It demands concentration, mental energy, and the ability to block out distractions. Engaging in deep work allows you to enter what is known as a flow state, where you become so absorbed in the task that time seems to disappear. It's in this state that you are most productive, most creative, and most capable of performing at your highest level. Deep work is a skill that can be cultivated. It's not something that comes naturally to everyone, especially in an environment that is designed to keep us distracted and constantly connected. However, the benefits of deep work are profound and far-reaching. The ability to focus deeply on a task for extended periods of time is not only critical for high performance in professional and academic environments, but also essential for personal growth, creativity, and satisfaction. When you engage in deep work, you don't just get more done. You produce better work, develop new skills, and experience a deep sense of accomplishment that comes from doing something well. The cognitive benefits of deep work: unlocking your brain's full potential. When you engage in deep work, you're not just checking off tasks from your to-do list. You're also reaping cognitive benefits that improve your brain's capacity to handle complex and demanding tasks. The concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, is at the heart of deep work. When you focus intently on a task, especially one that is challenging, your brain is building new connections, strengthening existing ones, and ultimately enhancing its ability to process information. This is why deep work isn't just about getting things done. It's also about growing intellectually and creatively. One of the primary cognitive benefits of deep work is improved problem-solving ability. The more you engage in deep work, the better you become at tackling complex problems that require creative solutions. This is because deep work allows you to tap into your brain's full potential, pushing you to think critically, analyze information, and make connections that you might not otherwise see. It's through sustained focus that you can access higher-order thinking skills and achieve breakthroughs that would otherwise be impossible. Additionally, the process of deep work promotes mental clarity and sharpens your decision-making skills. By fully immersing yourself in a task, you eliminate distractions that would otherwise cloud your judgment, allowing you to make more informed, accurate decisions. Another important cognitive benefit of deep work is the enhancement of your working memory. Working memory is the brain's ability to hold and manipulate information over short periods of time, and it plays a crucial role in problem-solving, decision-making, and learning. Deep work exercises your working memory by forcing you to hold multiple pieces of information in your mind simultaneously while you analyze and process them. Over time, this improves the efficiency of your working memory, allowing you to think faster, retain information more effectively, and perform at a higher cognitive level. Moreover, deep work has been shown to improve creativity. When you work without distractions, you have the mental space to think outside the box, connect disparate ideas, and come up with innovative solutions. In the absence of constant interruptions, your mind has the freedom to wander, to explore new possibilities, and to tap into your creative potential. Deep work also reduces cognitive fatigue, allowing you to maintain mental energy and focus over longer periods, which is crucial for sustained creative output. As you continue to engage in deep work, you build mental resilience, making it easier to tackle increasingly difficult challenges and push your cognitive limits further. Overcoming the distractions of the modern world. Training your brain for focus. The challenge of deep work in today's world is not just about understanding its benefits. It's about overcoming the distractions that prevent us from accessing this state of focused, undistracted effort. In an age where we are constantly connected, notifications and distractions are ubiquitous. Our phones, computers, and other devices are designed to keep us plugged in at all times, pulling our attention in a million different directions. This constant state of hyperstimulation makes it incredibly difficult to maintain the level of concentration needed for deep work. One of the primary obstacles to deep work is what is known as attention residue. This phenomenon occurs when your attention is divided between multiple tasks or distractions, and the cognitive residue from those distractions lingers in your mind, making it difficult to fully engage with the task at hand. For example, if you check your email or social media while working on a project, your brain remains partially preoccupied with the contents of those emails or messages, even after you've moved back to your main task. This lingering residue reduces your cognitive capacity and prevents you from fully concentrating, making it harder to perform at your best. The more distractions you allow into your workflow, the greater the attention residue, and the harder it becomes to enter a state of deep work. To overcome this challenge, you must take proactive steps to eliminate distractions and train your brain to focus. One of the most effective ways to do this is by creating an environment that is conducive to deep work. This might mean turning off notifications, setting up a quiet space to work, or using tools like website blockers to prevent access to distracting websites. But eliminating external distractions is only part of the solution. You must also train your mind to resist the internal distractions that arise, such as the urge to check your phone or the temptation to procrastinate. Developing mental discipline is key to mastering deep work, and this requires consistent practice and intentional effort. The process of training your brain to focus involves strengthening your ability to resist temptation and redirect your attention when distractions arise. One effective technique for doing this is called focused sprints. In this method, you commit to working in intense, focused bursts for a set amount of time, typically 25 to 50 minutes, followed by short breaks. This helps to train your brain to concentrate for extended periods, while also giving it time to rest and recharge. Over time, as you practice focused sprints, you will build mental endurance and improve your ability to maintain focus during deep work sessions. Another technique that can help improve focus is mindfulness meditation. By practicing mindfulness, you learn to observe your thoughts and bring your attention back to the task at hand whenever distractions arise. This strengthens your ability to remain present and fully engaged in the work, even in the face of constant distractions. The goal of deep work is not just to get more done. It's about training your brain to perform at its highest level and engage fully in the tasks that matter most. By developing the ability to focus deeply, you can unlock your true potential, produce higher quality work, and experience greater satisfaction and fulfillment in your professional and personal life. Chapter 4: The Neuroscience of Dopamine and Deep Work. As we embark on the journey of mastering deep work, understanding the underlying science of our brain's reward system is crucial. Deep work, the intense focus and concentration that allows us to push the boundaries of our cognitive capabilities, is intimately connected with the brain's dopamine system. This neurotransmitter, often associated with pleasure, motivation, and reward, plays a central role in our ability to engage in meaningful, productive work. However, dopamine is not a simple pleasure-seeking chemical. It is deeply involved in our brain's learning processes, memory, and even our capacity to experience satisfaction in accomplishing long-term goals. In this chapter, we'll explore the neuroscience of dopamine and how it interacts with deep work, the ways dopamine can be both an ally and an adversary in our pursuit of focus, and how we can recalibrate our brain's reward system to support sustained, high-quality work. The role of dopamine in motivation and reward. Dopamine is often referred to as the motivation molecule because it is crucial in driving our desire to pursue goals. This neurotransmitter is released when we encounter something rewarding, whether it's a piece of chocolate, a notification on our phone, or a goal that's within reach. But dopamine's role goes beyond simple pleasure. It's involved in the brain's reward circuitry, constantly updating our sense of progress and reinforcing behaviors that lead to desired outcomes. The release of dopamine signals to our brain that we've done something worthwhile and motivates us to repeat the behavior. This is why dopamine is so strongly connected to learning and habit formation. It helps us recognize patterns of behavior that lead to rewards and drives us to repeat them, creating a feedback loop that reinforces those behaviors. However, dopamine is not only released when we experience immediate rewards, it's also released when we anticipate rewards. This is why the act of pursuing a goal or striving for an outcome can be so motivating, even if the reward itself is far in the future. Our brains are wired to feel good, not just when we achieve something, but when we're on the path toward achieving it. This anticipation keeps us moving forward, guiding our efforts and spurring us to take action. In the context of deep work, dopamine's role is crucial. When we engage in tasks that require sustained focus and effort, our brain releases dopamine as we make progress, keeping us motivated to continue pushing through the challenges. This release of dopamine reinforces the deep work habit and helps us to stay engaged in cognitively demanding tasks for longer periods of time. However, this same reward system can also be hijacked by the lure of immediate gratification. This is where the battle between dopamine-driven distractions and deep work comes into play. In today's world, where notifications, social media, and other instant rewards are constantly vying for our attention, the dopamine system becomes a double-edged sword. On one hand, dopamine drives us to achieve long-term goals by rewarding us for progress. On the other hand, the constant availability of instant gratification, whether in the form of checking our phones or engaging in online entertainment, floods our brain with dopamine, reinforcing short-term, shallow rewards that undermine our ability to engage in the kind of focused, long-term work required for deep success. Understanding how dopamine works and how it impacts our motivation is key to harnessing its power in a productive way, rather than letting it derail our ability to focus on the tasks that truly matter. Dopamine, distraction, and the attention economy. The modern world, with its relentless connectivity and constant stimulation, is designed to keep us distracted. From the moment we wake up, we're bombarded with notifications, emails, and messages that demand our attention. These distractions are not just harmless interruptions. They are carefully crafted to take advantage of our brain's dopamine system. Every time we check our phone, respond to a text, or scroll through social media, we are triggering a release of dopamine. This creates a feedback loop in which our brains become conditioned to expect these frequent bursts of stimulation, making it increasingly difficult to focus on tasks that don't provide the same immediate rewards. In this way, the dopamine system becomes a tool that companies and platforms use to keep us engaged with their content. The more time we spend on these platforms, the more dopamine is released, reinforcing the behavior and creating a cycle of habitual checking and scrolling. This phenomenon is known as the attention economy And it is one of the key reasons why deep work has become so difficult in today's world. The attention economy thrives on the premise that human attention is a scarce and valuable resource. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube are designed to capture and hold our attention for as long as possible, using algorithms and notifications that keep us coming back for more. Each time we interact with these platforms, our brains release dopamine, creating a sense of reward and reinforcing the behavior. This makes it incredibly hard to break free from the constant pull of digital distractions, as our brains become wired to seek out these quick, pleasurable hits of dopamine. The result is that we become less capable of sustaining the kind of deep focus required for high-level cognitive work, as our attention is constantly fragmented by the lure of instant gratification. Moreover, the attention economy has led to the normalization of distraction. We are increasingly conditioned to expect that our attention will be divided between multiple tasks and stimuli at once. Multitasking, which is often seen as a productivity hack, is in reality a productivity killer. Every time we switch between tasks, whether it's checking an email, responding to a text, or scrolling through a social media feed, we are breaking our focus and fragmenting our attention. This constant task switching makes it difficult to engage in the kind of deep, uninterrupted work that leads to meaningful accomplishments. It also increases cognitive load, making it harder for our brains to process and retain information. In essence, the attention economy feeds our addiction to distraction, undermining our ability to concentrate on tasks that require deep cognitive effort. By understanding how dopamine drives this cycle of distraction, we can take active steps to regain control over our attention and refocus on the tasks that matter most. Wiring your brain. Harnessing dopamine for deep work. The good news is that our brains are not hardwired to remain stuck in patterns of distraction. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, means that we can actively rewire our brains to break free from the addiction to instant gratification and cultivate the ability to engage in deep work. The first step in this process is to become aware of how dopamine influences our behavior. By recognizing that dopamine is a key driver of our habits, both good and bad, we can begin to understand how it shapes our actions and reactions. With this awareness, we can take intentional steps to shift our focus away from distractions and toward tasks that require sustained effort and concentration. One of the most effective ways to rewire your brain is through intentional habit formation. Deep work requires the cultivation of habits that support long-term focus and productivity, rather than habits that encourage constant distraction. One way to do this is by creating dopamine detox periods, where you intentionally avoid behaviors that release dopamine, such as checking your phone, watching TV, or engaging in social media. During these detox periods, you allow your brain to reset, breaking the feedback loop of constant stimulation and rewarding your brain for engaging in tasks that require focused, deliberate effort. Over time, as you practice these detox periods, your brain will begin to shift its reward system, learning to find satisfaction in the deep work itself rather than in the fleeting rewards of distraction. Another powerful strategy for rewiring your brain is to use the power of delayed gratification. Instead of seeking out instant rewards, you can train yourself to focus on long-term goals and the satisfaction that comes from achieving them. This can be done by setting clear, measurable goals and breaking them down into smaller, manageable tasks. By doing this, you create a sense of progress and accomplishment that is sustained over time, providing your brain with a steady stream of dopamine rewards without the need for constant distractions. The key is to gradually shift your brain's reward system from short-term pleasure to long-term fulfillment, creating a more balanced and sustainable approach to motivation and focus. Finally, it's important to recognize that deep work is not just about productivity. It's about cultivating a sense of meaning and purpose in your work. Dopamine is not only released in response to pleasure, it is also released when we engage in activities that are meaningful and rewarding. When you commit to deep work, you are investing in your own personal growth, creativity, and intellectual development. The satisfaction that comes from completing a challenging task or solving a complex problem is a form of intrinsic motivation that provides lasting fulfillment. By aligning your deep work with your personal values and goals, you can create a sense of purpose that fuels your focus and drives you to perform at your best. In this chapter, we've explored the science of dopamine and its powerful influence on motivation, reward, and distraction. Dopamine is not just the driver of our immediate pleasures. It is the key to understanding how our brains respond to both deep work and distractions. By becoming aware of how dopamine shapes our behavior, we can take proactive steps to rewire our brain's reward system, shifting our focus from short-term gratification to long-term fulfillment. The journey of deep work is not just about working harder. It's about learning to work smarter, using the power of dopamine to support sustained, meaningful effort. As we continue to explore the path to mastery, we'll discover how to use this knowledge to create new habits, overcome distractions, and achieve our most ambitious goals. Chapter 5. Overcoming Resistance. How to cultivate the deep work habit. If you've ever sat down to do deep work, you know that it's not always as easy as it sounds. Despite understanding its importance, despite knowing that deep work is the key to unlocking our highest potential, we often find ourselves resisting the very thing that can bring us the most reward. This resistance, this inner battle against focus and discipline, is one of the biggest challenges we face when trying to cultivate deep work habits. It's as if the brain itself has been conditioned to fight against the very thing that will make it stronger, more focused, and ultimately, more successful. But why does resistance exist, and how can we overcome it? In this chapter, we will explore the psychological and physiological mechanisms behind resistance, examine why our brains are so quick to avoid the discomfort of sustained focus, and, most importantly, offer practical strategies for cultivating deep work habits that can withstand the inevitable pull of procrastination and distraction. The nature of resistance, understanding the brain's desire for comfort. Resistance to deep work is often rooted in our brain's natural inclination to seek comfort and avoid discomfort. This tendency is a survival mechanism that dates back to our earliest ancestors, when conserving energy and avoiding pain were essential for survival. Our brains are wired to look for immediate rewards and avoid tasks that feel uncomfortable, challenging, or unfamiliar. Deep work, with its demand for intense concentration, mental effort, and sustained focus, is the exact opposite of what the brain finds comfortable. This is why it's so easy to fall into patterns of procrastination when faced with important but challenging tasks. Our brains simply don't want to engage in the hard work of deep focus. It feels too taxing, too demanding. This resistance is further amplified by the modern world's constant stream of distractions. In an age where instant gratification is just a click away, whether through social media, entertainment, or email, the brain is conditioned to seek out these quick dopamine hits rather than invest in the long-term reward that comes from deep, focused work. The moment we sit down to focus on something important, the brain begins to search for any potential distraction, no matter how small, in an attempt to relieve the discomfort of sustained focus. The pull of distractions, whether it's the compulsion to check your phone, the temptation to read an article, or simply the urge to get up and do something else, feels almost magnetic. This is the resistance at work, a psychological force that seeks to pull you away from the task at hand and into the comfortable realm of distraction. However, understanding the nature of resistance is the first step in overcoming it. By recognizing that this resistance is not a reflection of your willpower or ability, but rather a natural function of your brain, you can begin to approach it with more compassion and strategy. Resistance doesn't mean you're weak or undisciplined. It simply means you're facing the natural pushback that comes with doing work that requires significant mental effort. Once you understand this, you can begin to cultivate the skills and habits that allow you to push through resistance and enter the state of deep work where your brain can perform at its highest level and you can accomplish meaningful, focused work. The power of routine, turning deep work into a daily habit. One of the most effective ways to overcome resistance and make deep work a sustainable part of your life is by building a routine around it. The power of routine cannot be overstated. When you commit to a set schedule for deep work, you eliminate the mental energy that goes into deciding when to work and what to focus on. Instead of relying on willpower or motivation, which can fluctuate from day to day, you create a consistent structure that trains your brain to expect and prepare for periods of focused work. This routine becomes a mental trigger, a signal to your brain that it's time to focus and engage in deep work, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Over time, your brain begins to associate certain times of the day with deep work, making it easier to enter a state of concentration. The key to building a successful deep work routine is consistency. Start by identifying the times of day when you are most alert and mentally capable of engaging in deep work. For many people, this might be early in the morning or after a period of rest. Once you've identified your optimal deep work times, schedule these periods into your day as non-negotiable appointments. Treat them with the same level of importance as a meeting or an important commitment. The more you commit to these periods of deep work, the more ingrained they become in your daily life. Eventually, deep work becomes a habit, something you don't even have to think about. Your brain will naturally begin to expect and crave these moments of intense focus, and the resistance that once felt so overwhelming will begin to lose its power. In addition to consistency, it's important to set clear, specific goals for each deep work session. This creates a sense of direction and purpose, making it easier to stay engaged and motivated. Instead of sitting down to work without a plan, define what you want to accomplish during each session. Whether it's writing a certain number of words, solving a particular problem, or completing a task, having a concrete goal gives you something to strive for, and the process of achieving that goal provides its own sense of reward. This clarity also reduces the likelihood of distraction, as your mind has a clear focus and can return to the task at hand when external distractions arise. Routine and clarity create a powerful feedback loop. The more you engage in deep work, the easier it becomes, and the more you build the habit of sustained focus and productivity. Mindset shifts, embracing the discomfort of deep work. While routine and structure are essential for overcoming resistance, one of the most important factors in cultivating deep work is a shift in mindset. The discomfort that often accompanies deep work, the sense of mental fatigue, frustration, and difficulty, can make it easy to avoid or abandon tasks that require sustained focus. However, rather than viewing this discomfort as a signal to stop or take a break, it's important to learn to embrace it as a natural part of the deep work process. This mindset shift is crucial for building resilience and maintaining long-term focus. When you reframe discomfort as a sign that you're engaging in valuable, high-level work, you begin to see it as a necessary part of the creative and productive process, not something to be feared or avoided. One effective strategy for embracing the discomfort of deep work is to break down large tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. When faced with an overwhelming project, the resistance to getting started can feel insurmountable. However, by breaking the task down into smaller, more digestible pieces, you can reduce the mental barrier to entry and make it easier to get started. Each small step becomes a mini goal, and the process of completing these steps provides a sense of progress that fuels your motivation to continue. This approach also helps to prevent the feeling of burnout that can arise from trying to tackle too much at once. Instead of focusing on the end goal, which may seem distant or unattainable, You focus on the immediate next step, allowing you to stay engaged and present in the process. Another important mindset shift is learning to see deep work as a skill that improves with practice. Much like building physical strength in the gym, the more you practice deep work, the stronger your ability to focus and concentrate becomes. In the beginning, deep work may feel uncomfortable or exhausting, and it may take time for your brain to adjust. However, with consistent practice, you begin to build cognitive endurance, and the mental discomfort that initially seemed insurmountable becomes more manageable. You start to experience the rewards of deep work, the satisfaction of accomplishing meaningful tasks, the sense of intellectual growth, and the confidence that comes from consistently pushing yourself to do your best work. This shift in mindset from avoidance to acceptance of discomfort is one of the most powerful tools you can use to overcome resistance and develop a deep work habit that lasts. In this chapter, we've explored the psychological barriers that stand in the way of deep work and provided strategies for overcoming them. Resistance to deep work is a natural response, but by understanding its root causes and implementing a routine, setting clear goals, and embracing the discomfort of focused effort, we can break through these barriers and make deep work a lasting part of our lives. By cultivating the deep work habit, we are not only increasing our productivity, we are strengthening our ability to focus, develop new skills, and ultimately create meaningful work that aligns with our highest potential. The battle against resistance is ongoing, but with the right tools and mindset, we can train our brains to engage in the kind of deep, focused work that leads to real success and fulfillment. This chapter emphasizes overcoming the resistance that prevents deep work by understanding its psychological nature, the importance of building a routine, and shifting our mindset to embrace discomfort. It provides practical strategies for creating deep work habits and reframing challenges as opportunities for growth. By addressing the internal obstacles to focus, we can cultivate a more productive, meaningful, and rewarding relationship with our work. Chapter 6. Managing the environment. Designing your space for deep work. The environment in which we work plays an often overlooked but crucial role in our ability to engage in deep work. Whether it's the noise in your office, the distractions at home, or the constant pull of digital devices, your surroundings can either support or hinder your ability to concentrate and perform at your highest level. The deeper we delve into the process of mastering deep work, the more we begin to realize that success is not just about the right mindset or the right routine. It's also about crafting an environment that encourages focus, minimizes distractions, and fosters productivity. In this chapter, we'll explore the importance of designing your physical and digital workspace to optimize for deep work, how to reduce distractions and create a space that maximizes your cognitive capacity, and how to build the mental and environmental structures that support sustained, meaningful work. By the end of this chapter, you will understand how to intentionally design your surroundings in a way that removes obstacles to deep work and cultivates the conditions for success. The power of a distraction-free zone. When it comes to deep work, one of the most important factors in creating an environment that supports your efforts is minimizing distractions. Distractions, whether internal or external, are the enemy of focus. They fragment our attention and pull us away from the task at hand, making it incredibly difficult to maintain sustained mental effort. The modern world is filled with distractions, from the ping of notifications on our phones to the hum of office chatter or the lure of digital entertainment. These distractions not only break our focus, but also lower the quality of our work. Every time we're interrupted, we have to recharge our focus, a process that takes time and mental energy. This constant switching between tasks can cause cognitive fatigue, reducing our ability to engage in deep, meaningful work. To combat this, it's essential to create a physical space that minimizes distractions. This starts with controlling your environment. In an office or home setting, designate a specific area for deep work that is free from interruptions. If possible, find a quiet room or a corner that is away from common traffic areas. This space should be free from the typical distractions of the digital age. No television, no social media, and no access to personal devices that might tempt you to check messages or notifications. You want this space to be reserved solely for the kind of high concentration work that deep work requires. A distraction-free zone allows you to immerse yourself fully in your tasks without constantly needing to refocus after every external interruption. Creating such a space doesn't just mean removing physical distractions. It also involves eliminating internal distractions. Our minds are constantly churning with thoughts, worries, and to-do lists. To manage these internal distractions, it can be helpful to set clear intentions before you begin each deep work session. Take a moment to write down what you want to achieve and set specific, measurable goals. This not only clarifies your focus, but also helps to quiet the mental noise that can distract you from the task at hand. By designating a physical space for deep work and preparing your mind for focus, you increase your ability to engage in high-level work and reduce the likelihood of your attention drifting to other concerns. The role of technology: managing digital distractions. In today's world, technology is one of the most significant sources of distraction. From the moment we wake up, we are inundated with digital stimuli: emails, text messages, social media alerts, and a constant stream of notifications. While technology has made our lives more efficient in many ways, it has also created a constant demand for our attention. Every ping, beep, or buzz pulls us away from the task at hand, breaking our focus and scattering our attention. In the context of deep work, digital distractions are particularly problematic, as they prevent us from fully immersing ourselves in cognitively demanding tasks. To combat this, it's crucial to establish boundaries with technology and use it as a tool for deep work rather than a source of distraction. Start by turning off non-essential notifications. This simple step can have a profound impact on your ability to focus, as you're no longer bombarded with constant updates and alerts. If you're working on a task that requires deep concentration, consider putting your phone in another room, using website blockers to prevent access to distracting sites, or setting specific time limits for checking emails or social media. These actions are not just about limiting distractions. They are about creating an environment that supports your focus and enhances your productivity. By setting clear boundaries with technology, you create the mental space needed to engage in deep work. It's also helpful to establish specific times during the day when you allow yourself to check emails, social media, or other digital communications. These times should be scheduled in advance and treated as non-negotiable. By limiting your interactions with technology to these designated periods, you prevent it from hijacking your attention throughout the day. This structure allows you to maintain control over your digital environment, rather than allowing your devices to control you. With less digital noise, your brain is able to focus on the task at hand, leading to deeper, more meaningful work. Technology can be an incredible asset to our work, but it must be managed intentionally to avoid becoming a constant source of distraction. The importance of mental and physical preparation for deep work. While creating a distraction-free environment is essential for cultivating deep work, it's equally important to prepare both your mind and body for the cognitive demands of focused, sustained effort. Deep work is mentally taxing. It requires high levels of concentration, problem-solving, and creative thinking. To perform at your best, it's essential to ensure that both your mind and body are in an optimal state for focus. This begins with physical preparation. A well-rested body is more capable of sustaining focus for longer periods, while physical discomfort or fatigue can make it much harder to stay engaged in deep work. To ensure you're physically prepared for deep work, make sleep a priority, maintain a healthy diet, and engage in regular exercise to keep your body energized and alert. Physical wellness is the foundation for mental clarity, and it can have a significant impact on your ability to concentrate and engage in high-level work. Equally important is mental preparation. Before sitting down to engage in deep work, it's helpful to engage in a brief ritual that signals to your brain that it's time to focus. This could be as simple as taking a few deep breaths, meditating for a few minutes, or writing down your goals for the session. Such rituals help to clear your mind of distractions and set a clear intention for the work ahead. It also helps to begin each deep work session with a sense of purpose and direction. Instead of diving straight into the task without preparation, take a moment to remind yourself why this work is important and how it aligns with your larger goals. This sense of purpose can help you overcome resistance and stay focused when challenges arise. Finally, don't underestimate the power of breaks. Deep work, though rewarding, is mentally exhausting, and taking regular breaks is crucial to maintaining high levels of focus. A good rule of thumb is to work in blocks of 90 minutes, followed by a short break. During these breaks, engage in activities that are different from your work, such as stretching, walking, or listening to music. These breaks allow your brain to recharge and reset, helping you maintain energy and focus for the next work session. By managing both your mental and physical state, you can optimize your ability to engage in deep work and ensure that each session is productive, focused, and fulfilling. In this chapter, we've explored the critical role that your environment plays in supporting or hindering your ability to engage in deep work. We've discussed how to create a distraction-free zone that fosters focus, how to manage digital distractions by setting boundaries with technology, and how to prepare your mind and body for the cognitive demands of deep work. Designing your environment is not just about removing obstacles. It's about actively creating the conditions that support sustained, meaningful work. By optimizing both your physical and mental surroundings, you increase your ability to engage in deep work and maximize your productivity, focus, and creative potential. As you move forward, remember that deep work is not just about the effort you put into your tasks. It's also about the environment you create to support your success. This chapter emphasizes the importance of creating a work environment that supports deep focus, minimizing distractions, and preparing both your body and mind for the demands of deep work. By managing your physical and digital spaces, as well as adopting routines and practices that optimize your energy and attention, you can create the optimal conditions for deep work and achieve your highest potential. Chapter 7. The Art of Sustaining Focus: How to Build Cognitive Endurance for Deep Work. The human mind is incredibly powerful, capable of achieving remarkable feats of creativity, concentration, and problem-solving. However, despite its potential, our ability to sustain focus for extended periods of time is often limited. In a world filled with distractions, where every moment is bombarded with information and interruptions, our ability to concentrate for deep, uninterrupted work has become a rare and valuable skill. Yet, like any skill, the ability to sustain focus for long periods is something that can be developed with practice and intention. In this chapter, we will explore how to build cognitive endurance for deep work, strategies for maintaining focus over time, and the mental and physical practices that will help you stay sharp, energized, and productive during your most intense work sessions. This is not a chapter about forcing yourself to work longer or harder. Rather, it's about understanding the mental and physical aspects of focus and learning how to sustain your attention for deep work without burning out. By cultivating cognitive endurance, you can achieve more in less time and unlock the power of sustained concentration. Understanding cognitive fatigue. Why focus is hard work. To build cognitive endurance, we first need to understand why maintaining focus for long periods is so challenging. Unlike physical endurance, which involves pushing our muscles to their limits and building strength over time, cognitive endurance involves training our minds to maintain sustained attention without succumbing to distractions or mental fatigue. However, our brains are not designed to focus continuously for hours on end. Cognitive fatigue, the mental exhaustion that sets in after prolonged periods of intense focus, is a natural response to the mental demands of deep work. The brain consumes a tremendous amount of energy when engaged in tasks that require focus, and just like physical muscles, it can become fatigued after extended use. This is why, after a long period of deep work, you may feel mentally drained, as though your brain is running on empty. The cognitive resources required to maintain sustained attention are finite, and without the proper management, focus can quickly deteriorate. Cognitive fatigue is also compounded by the constant pull of distractions, both external and internal. External distractions, such as noise, interruptions, or the temptation of social media, can break your concentration, forcing your brain to switch tasks and use valuable mental energy to reorient itself. Internal distractions, such as wandering thoughts, anxieties, or self-doubt, add another layer of complexity to the challenge of sustained focus. Every time your attention shifts away from your task, whether it's because of a distraction or a mental lapse, it takes time and energy to refocus. The more frequent these interruptions, the more your cognitive energy is depleted, and the more difficult it becomes to maintain focus. This cycle of starting and stopping not only hinders productivity, but also creates a sense of mental exhaustion that makes it harder to engage in deep work over time. Understanding cognitive fatigue is the first step in learning how to build cognitive endurance. The key to sustaining focus is not simply pushing through fatigue, but rather learning how to manage and recover from it. By incorporating practices that reduce mental strain, allow for recovery, and optimize cognitive performance, you can build the endurance needed to sustain deep work for longer periods without experiencing burnout or diminishing returns. Building cognitive endurance is a gradual process, one that requires consistency, intention, and a recognition of the limits of your brain's capacity. It's not about pushing yourself to the brink of exhaustion, but rather about training your mind to focus for longer and longer periods while maintaining clarity and energy. The power of regular breaks, preventing mental burnout. One of the most effective strategies for building cognitive endurance is taking regular breaks during your deep work sessions. It may seem counterintuitive. Why would taking a break make it easier to focus for longer periods? The truth is, breaks are not a sign of weakness or lack of discipline. In fact, they are essential for maintaining mental clarity and preventing cognitive burnout. Research shows that the brain operates best when it alternates between periods of intense focus and recovery. Just as a marathon runner needs to pace themselves to avoid exhaustion, your brain requires regular breaks to maintain its performance over time. Without breaks, cognitive fatigue sets in, and your ability to concentrate deteriorates. A break, however short, allows your brain to recharge, refresh, and return to the task at hand with renewed energy. There are several strategies for incorporating breaks into your deep work routine. One of the most popular methods is the Pomodoro technique, which involves working in focused bursts of 25 minutes, followed by a 5-minute break. After 4 cycles, you take a longer break of 15 to 30 minutes. This technique works by giving your brain a chance to recover between focused work periods, ensuring that your cognitive energy doesn't deplete too quickly. The Pomodoro technique also helps to maintain a sense of urgency and focus, as you know that a break is coming soon, making it easier to resist distractions and stay on task. However, the Pomodoro technique is just one example of how to structure your work and rest periods. The key is to find a rhythm that works for you, whether that's working for longer periods and taking fewer breaks, or breaking your work into shorter intervals. The goal is to balance focus with recovery, ensuring that your brain remains sharp, alert, and ready for sustained deep work. It's also important to make your breaks restorative. Simply stepping away from your work for a few minutes isn't enough. Your breaks should be designed to give your brain a real rest. This means engaging in activities that are completely different from the mental demands of your work, such as going for a walk, stretching, practicing mindfulness, or even meditating. Activities that involve physical movement are particularly effective for recharging cognitive energy, as they promote blood flow to the brain and help alleviate the physical tension that can build up from sitting for long periods. These restorative breaks allow your mind to reset, so when you return to your deep work, you can approach it with fresh energy and renewed focus. Building mental resilience, training your brain for focus. While breaks are essential for maintaining cognitive endurance, building the ability to sustain focus for long periods also requires mental training. Just like physical endurance, cognitive endurance improves with practice. The more you challenge your brain to stay focused, the stronger your ability to concentrate becomes. The key to building mental resilience is to start small and gradually increase the intensity and duration of your focus sessions. If you're just beginning to build your ability to engage in deep work, it's important to start with shorter periods of focus and then progressively lengthen them. Trying to jump into hours of deep work right away is likely to lead to frustration and burnout. Instead, aim for a balance between challenge and capacity, gradually pushing the limits of your focus while ensuring that you're not overwhelming your brain's capacity for concentration. One way to build mental resilience is through mindfulness practices, which can help train your brain to stay present and focused. Mindfulness involves paying attention to the present moment without judgment, which can help you become more aware of when your mind starts to wander. By practicing mindfulness regularly, you strengthen your ability to return your focus to the task at hand, even when distractions arise. Mindfulness also reduces the mental clutter that often makes it harder to focus. When your mind is filled with worry, anxiety, or an endless stream of thoughts, it's much more difficult to stay focused on the work in front of you. Mindfulness helps clear the mental noise, allowing you to concentrate more fully on your deep work. Additionally, developing a growth mindset plays a crucial role in building mental resilience for deep work. A growth mindset is the belief that your abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort and practice. When you adopt a growth mindset, you view challenges as opportunities for growth rather than as obstacles to avoid. This mindset helps you persevere through the inevitable moments of frustration or difficulty that arise during deep work sessions. Rather than seeing distractions or lapses in focus as signs of failure, you view them as part of the learning process. Over time, this perspective helps you become more resilient, making it easier to stay focused for longer periods and embrace the discomfort of sustained deep work. In this chapter, we've explored the concept of cognitive endurance and how to build the mental stamina required for deep work. We've discussed how cognitive fatigue impacts our ability to focus, the importance of regular breaks for maintaining focus, and the practices that can help strengthen your mental resilience. Building cognitive endurance is not about forcing yourself to work longer hours. Rather, it's about training your mind to focus more effectively and efficiently over time. By incorporating strategies for managing mental energy, taking restorative breaks, and developing a growth mindset, you can build the endurance needed to engage in deep work for extended periods. This will not only increase your productivity, but also allow you to tap into your full potential and produce your best work. Chapter 8: Rewiring the Brain, the Long-Term Effects of Dopamine. The concept of rewiring the brain often conjures images of dramatic personal transformation, of someone going from scattered and reactive to focused and calm, seemingly overnight. But in reality, the process is slower, deeper, and far more permanent than many expect. It isn't a matter of simply replacing bad habits with good ones. It's about restructuring the very architecture of how your brain processes information, responds to stimuli, and regulates motivation. When we talk about dopamine detox and its lasting impact, what we're really talking about is the brain's incredible ability to adapt and change over time. It's neuroplasticity. This chapter is dedicated to understanding that long-term process. We'll examine how dopamine discipline helps reshape the brain for sustained focus, what enduring changes occur with consistent practice, and how you can take ownership of your attention and build a mind that serves you rather than distracts you. This isn't just about quitting your worst impulses or learning to say no. It's about becoming fundamentally different in how you engage with the world and with yourself. Neuroplasticity and habit transformation. The brain is not static. For decades, neuroscientists believed that by the time we reached adulthood, the structure of our brains was essentially fixed. We might learn new things, of course, but the core wiring, the habits, impulses, and automatic patterns, were largely set in stone. But research in neuroplasticity has completely overturned that assumption. We now know that the brain is constantly changing in response to the experiences we feed it, the choices we make, and the habits we reinforce. Every time you resist the temptation to scroll aimlessly or push through a difficult task without switching tabs, you're sending your brain a message? This is the path I want to strengthen. And your brain listens. Through a process called synaptic pruning, neural connections that are used frequently become stronger and more efficient, while those that are unused begin to fade away. This means that every time you opt for deep work instead of distraction, you're not just resisting something. You're actively carving new, more focused pathways into the neural landscape of your mind. Over time, these changes become more pronounced. What once felt like effort, resisting the pull of Instagram, staying on task for an hour, avoiding mindless entertainment, becomes second nature. The difficulty fades, not because the world becomes less tempting, but because your brain has adapted to a different mode of operation. This is the essence of habit transformation. It's not about white-knuckling your way through life. It's about changing what feels natural. The more consistently you detox from dopamine-saturated behaviors and embrace disciplined, intentional ones, the more those intentional behaviors become default. This is why small, consistent action matters more than massive, unsustainable efforts. You're not just trying to survive a week without your favorite distraction. You're teaching your brain what to prioritize, what to expect, and what kind of person you are. That identity shift, fueled by neuroplasticity, is where long-term change takes root. Importantly, this rewiring isn't restricted to so-called productive habits. It also extends to how we experience pleasure. When the brain is no longer overstimulated by constant novelty, it begins to find joy in subtler, more meaningful sources. A walk becomes more satisfying. A single page of a book becomes engrossing. A moment of stillness feels rich rather than empty. This is the beauty of neuroplasticity. It not only enables us to change our behavior, but it also transforms our internal experience of the world. Over time, you don't just act differently, you feel differently. And in a society addicted to immediacy and excess, that shift is nothing short of revolutionary. The deepening of focus over time. When most people begin practicing dopamine discipline, they notice an immediate difficulty in focusing. Their minds wander, they fidget, they reach for their phones even when they're not supposed to. This isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign of adaptation. The modern mind is like a muscle that's been atrophied by years of disuse. Expecting it to perform at a high level right away is unrealistic. But just as with physical training, consistent effort leads to significant gains over time. As you continue to practice deep work and detox from high dopamine distractions, your brain begins to develop endurance. Tasks that once felt tedious or impossible to finish in one sitting start to feel manageable. Eventually, they become immersive. This progression is one of the most powerful benefits of long-term dopamine discipline. Your ability to focus deepens, both in duration and in intensity. This deepening focus doesn't just improve your output, it fundamentally changes your relationship with time and attention. Instead of flitting between tasks or feeling like there's never enough time, you begin to experience work in a more fluid, integrated way. Time stretches when you're deeply focused, 1 hour of uninterrupted, intentional work can produce more value than 4 hours of fragmented, distracted effort. As your brain becomes accustomed to this rhythm, it begins to crave it. The endless dopamine hits of scrolling or superficial entertainment no longer hold the same appeal, not because they're forbidden, but because they pale in comparison to the satisfaction of true immersion. This is when you know your focus has matured, when it becomes self-reinforcing. You no longer need to force yourself to concentrate, because the act of deep work itself becomes its own reward. Moreover, sustained focus creates a feedback loop of confidence. Every time you complete a difficult task without distraction, you prove something to yourself. You reinforce the belief that you are capable of deep, meaningful work. That confidence builds with each session, each completed project, each moment of resistance overcome. Eventually, you begin to see yourself not as someone who struggles with focus, but as someone who thrives in it. This shift in self-concept is one of the most powerful results of long-term dopamine discipline. It moves you from effort to identity, from trying to stay on task to simply being the kind of person who does. And that shift is not fragile. It's durable. It stays with you, even when the world gets noisy again. Becoming the architect of your attention. There comes a point in the process of rewiring your brain when you begin to realize something profound. You are not at the mercy of your impulses. You are not doomed to distraction. You are not a passive recipient of your brain's whims. You are the architect of your attention. And that realization changes everything. When you internalize that your environment, your routines, your digital habits, and even your thought patterns are all within your influence, you begin to approach focus as a craft, not a constraint. You no longer see dopamine discipline as a set of rules, but as a form of agency. You have the power to shape your inner world, and in doing so, you shape your outer world too. This level of intentionality doesn't happen overnight. It emerges slowly, as the result of repeated practice and reflection. You start to notice which environments help you concentrate and which ones sabotage your efforts. You become attuned to the times of day when your energy peaks, and you design your schedule around them. You curate your digital space so that it supports your goals rather than undermines them. You don't just remove distractions. You replace them with rituals of focus, signals that tell your brain, it's time to go deep. This could be something as simple as a particular playlist, a cup of coffee in a certain mug, or a quiet moment of breathing before you begin. Over time, these small acts become anchors, reminders that you are in control, that this space is sacred, and that your attention is not for sale. Eventually, your external world starts to mirror your internal clarity. You begin to say no more often, not out of avoidance, but out of alignment. You prioritize depth over breadth, substance over speed, and most importantly, you begin to protect your focus, not just as a tool for productivity, but as a reflection of who you are becoming. You no longer chase stimulation to escape boredom. You no longer fear stillness. You embrace it, because you know that stillness is where insight lives, where creativity flourishes, and where true growth begins. In becoming the architect of your attention, you claim ownership of your life in a way that is rare, powerful, and deeply liberating. Chapter 9. From Chaos to Clarity, Reclaiming Time Through Dopamine Discipline. In the modern world, the war for your attention is also a war for your time. Though the ticking of the clock has not changed, the way we experience time has radically transformed in the digital age. We are often left feeling like time is slipping through our fingers, not because the day is any shorter, but because our attention is scattered across 1,000 blinking notifications, endless feeds, and micro-distractions that carve out minutes and hours from our day without us even noticing. Many people live in a state of what could be called time blur, where they begin the day with intentions and end it with confusion over where the hours have gone. At the heart of dopamine detox is a powerful reclaiming of time. It's a return to clarity, a deliberate reshaping of our daily rhythms so that we are not just reacting to life, but intentionally shaping it. This chapter dives into the process of transforming time from a chaotic force that controls us into a structured, aligned system that serves our deepest goals. Time blindness in the digital age. One of the most dangerous consequences of unchecked dopamine addiction is what psychologists refer to as time blindness. This isn't just being late to meetings or missing appointments. It's the creeping inability to sense how much time is passing, to gauge the flow of your day with any real accuracy. Time blindness is especially prevalent in people who spend large chunks of the day engaged in dopamine-rich activities, browsing social media, binge-watching series, jumping from tab to tab in a browser. These activities may seem harmless in small doses, but the way they disrupt our perception of time is profound. We sit down for what we believe will be 5 minutes of scrolling and look up an hour later, unable to account for what we just consumed. Unlike engaging in a task that demands our attention or contributes to a meaningful outcome, these digital distractions leave no trace in our memory. They fill the hours without adding value, and because they do not require real cognitive engagement, they create a mental fog, a blurred stretch of time that feels both empty and exhausting. The more time we spend in this state, the more we lose our grip on how long tasks actually take, how we spend our days, and how much time is truly available to us. We overcommit because we underestimate. We procrastinate because we think there's more time. We panic at the end of the day, feeling we've done nothing, even though we were busy for hours. Dopamine discipline begins by stripping away these artificial inputs that distort time. When we remove the quick hits, when we no longer jump from video to notification to text, something fascinating begins to happen. We begin to feel time again. A minute starts to feel like a minute. An hour becomes enough space to accomplish something meaningful. In that newly regained awareness, we start to make different choices. We begin to plan not just for productivity, but for balance. We learn to protect time as a finite, sacred resource instead of treating it like an endless stream to be dipped into carelessly. There is an emotional layer to this transformation as well. Time blindness is often accompanied by guilt, anxiety, and frustration. We feel guilty for wasting time, anxious about deadlines, and frustrated by our seeming inability to get control. But the truth is, it's not a personal failing. It's a design flaw in the systems we've allowed into our lives. Notifications are engineered to distract, algorithms to captivate, interfaces to keep us hooked. Recognizing this is the first step in forgiving yourself and moving forward. Dopamine detox is not just about discipline, it's about awareness. By cutting out these time-distorting inputs, we gain clarity, not just of time, but of self. We begin to trust our sense of duration again, to become reacquainted with the rhythm of a normal day, and to reestablish a grounded relationship with the ticking clock. Redesigning the day for deep work. Once we clear away the noise and regain our sense of time, the next step is redesigning our days to support deep work. This is not simply a matter of making a better to-do list or using a new planner. It is a fundamental reorientation of how we view the structure of our lives. Deep work is not something that happens in the margins. It is something that must be built into the architecture of your day. And this begins with creating containers for focused effort. A container is a block of time, a space free from interruption, distraction, or noise that is protected with the same seriousness as a meeting or a doctor's appointment. When you begin building containers, you are no longer leaving your most important work to chance. You are asserting that focus is a priority, not a luxury. These containers are most powerful when they are consistent. The brain thrives on routine. If you focus deeply for the first 2 hours every morning, your mind begins to expect that rhythm. You enter those hours with less resistance and greater clarity. Dopamine detox accelerates this process by eliminating the competing rewards that would otherwise fragment your attention. Without the temptation of quick dopamine hits, your brain learns to settle into the more subtle but far more rewarding flow state that deep work provides. Over time, this becomes a virtuous cycle. The more you engage in focused work, the easier it becomes. The easier it becomes, the more you trust yourself to enter it. The more you trust yourself, the more your confidence grows. This is how high-performing creatives, thinkers, and entrepreneurs build extraordinary bodies of work, not through frantic multitasking, but through repeated focused engagement within well-designed containers. Equally important in this redesign is the management of transitions. Much of our cognitive energy is lost in the space between tasks when we move from one context to another without clear boundaries or rituals. By creating clear beginnings and endings to our deep work blocks, we reduce mental friction and conserve willpower. For instance, beginning a focus session with a short walk, a breath exercise, or a consistent sound cue, like a specific playlist or soundscape, trains the mind to shift gears more smoothly. Ending sessions with a brief reflection or journaling moment helps close the loop, creating a sense of progress and closure. These rituals, simple as they may seem, are powerful tools in solidifying the new rhythm of your day. They remind your mind that you are not simply working. You are engaging in an intentional practice of focus, presence, and growth. Building a rhythm of intentional living. What begins as a set of structured work periods eventually expands into a whole new way of life. The final and most rewarding stage of reclaiming time through dopamine discipline is the emergence of what can only be described as a rhythm of intentional living. At this stage, the principles of focus, clarity, and deep work are no longer confined to work tasks. They seep into every corner of your day. You begin to eat more mindfully, walk more presently, speak more thoughtfully. Even leisure takes on a different texture. You are no longer pulled toward numbing entertainment, but are drawn to activities that enrich, nourish, and energize. Reading, gardening, spending time in nature, unhurried conversations. These are no longer seen as luxuries, but as vital parts of a life lived in alignment. Intentional living means that you are no longer running on autopilot. You are choosing your actions, your inputs, and your outputs. You are no longer reactive. You are proactive. The chaos that once defined your days gives way to clarity, not because everything is perfectly organized, but because you have developed an inner compass. This compass allows you to navigate the inevitable uncertainty and noise of modern life without losing your grounding. You don't need to respond to every ping or alert. You don't need to chase every new trend or fear missing out. You are rooted in your own rhythm, a rhythm that supports your goals, your values, and your peace of mind. Perhaps most importantly, intentional living brings with it a profound sense of satisfaction. When your days are designed to reflect what matters most, even the ordinary becomes meaningful. Washing dishes, writing a single paragraph, listening to music, these become opportunities to be present, to be engaged, to be alive. Dopamine detox is not about restriction. It's about expansion. By removing the false highs, we make space for real fulfillment. By clearing the clutter of meaningless inputs, we uncover the richness of everyday experience. This is the ultimate reward of reclaiming time. Not just better productivity, but a better life. One where you are no longer a passenger, but the pilot. No longer scattered, but centered. No longer hurried, but intentional in every step. Chapter 10. Rewiring the reward system. Turning discipline into desire for most of our lives. We are taught that discipline is a matter of force, something we must impose on ourselves, like a rigid framework we carry against our will, grinding through discomfort towards some greater good. But what if this understanding is flawed? What if true discipline doesn't stem from repression, but from a deep reconfiguration of how our brain perceives reward? At the heart of every habit, every decision, every action we repeat, lies a system of reinforcement. We do what feels good, or what once felt good, or what we believe might feel good. This chapter is about diving under the surface of that reinforcement system, that primal loop of craving, action, and reward, and learning to redesign it. When we talk about dopamine detox, we're not just talking about removing the noise. We're talking about fundamentally rewiring the circuitry that drives our behavior so that the things we want to do become the things that feel good to do. This is where the magic happens. This is where discipline becomes natural and where effort transforms into desire. Understanding the dopamine reinforcement feedback loop. Every time we take an action and feel satisfaction afterward, our brain records a small note. This is good. Do this again. That note is written in dopamine. Dopamine doesn't just give us pleasure. It teaches us what to seek out in the future. The more often we engage in a behavior that triggers dopamine, the stronger the association becomes. This is the essence of reinforcement learning in the human brain. If we eat a cookie and it feels good, we don't just enjoy the moment. We encode the entire experience: the smell of the kitchen, the sound of the wrapper, the glance toward the pantry, into a complex network of associations that prime us to do it again. The brain becomes a master of efficiency, constantly scanning for opportunities to repeat those experiences. The problem in the modern world is not that this system is broken. It's that it's been hijacked. We live in an environment saturated with supernormal stimuli, hyperpalatable foods, endless novelty online, constant notifications that artificially inflate the dopamine response. These high-intensity signals outcompete the quieter, more meaningful ones. Reading a book, finishing a task, exercising, all of these are profoundly satisfying in the long term, but produce far less immediate dopamine. Over time, our reward system becomes biased toward the shallow, the easy, the instant. We lose the ability to sit with effort, to crave things that require patience. This is where the detox begins to matter most, not because we're trying to suffer, but because we need to recalibrate. Imagine a world where you walk past your phone and feel no pull to check it, where you sit down to write and your brain responds with curiosity rather than dread, where exercise feels not like punishment, but like relief. This is possible, but only when we take control of the feedback loop. To do this, we must first break the chain of automatic reinforcement. That means removing or heavily reducing the activities that produce quick dopamine without deep value. Social media, binge watching, compulsive snacking. These are the false signals we must starve, but this is only the first step. The second, more powerful step is to start layering dopamine onto the behaviors we want to reinforce. After a deep work session, we reflect, we celebrate, we take note of how focused we felt. After a workout, we bask in the post-movement high. We turn attention toward the reward that's already there, making it louder in the mind. The more we notice it, the more the brain encodes that loop. Over time, the association grows. Craving begins to attach itself to meaningful work. This is not forced. This is biological learning, directed intentionally. Transmuting cravings into constructive habits. If cravings are patterns etched into our neural pathways, then they can be rewritten. The process of transmutation, of turning destructive desires into constructive ones, is not one of suppression, but of redirection. A craving is energy. It is the body and mind preparing for action. What we often do is misdirect that energy toward the easiest outlet available. When we feel restless, we reach for our phones. When we're stressed, we open a tab and scroll. But what if that same signal, the restlessness, the tension, could be rerouted toward a behavior that aligns with our goals? The key here is not to fight the craving, but to attach it to a different loop. This is where intentional substitution becomes a superpower. We choose a high-quality alternative that is accessible, rewarding, and beneficial, and we pair it consistently with the moment of craving. Over time, the brain reassigns the craving. The pull to scroll becomes the pull to journal. The urge to snack becomes the urge to walk. The itch for stimulation becomes a moment to breathe, reset, and re-engage. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight. The brain needs repetition, consistency, and a clear feedback loop. This is why habit stacking works so well. By attaching a desired behavior to a pre-existing cue, we piggyback on established neural routines. Let's say your default response to boredom is checking your phone. Instead of eliminating that moment entirely, you insert a new behavior. When you notice the urge, you stand up, stretch, and take 3 breaths. At first, this feels small, even silly, but the power is in the pattern. You're teaching your brain, when this feeling arises, this is what we do. Over weeks and months, that new loop begins to take hold. The craving doesn't go away. It evolves. It matures. What you're doing, in essence, is alchemy. Taking the raw energy of desire and refining it into something that builds you rather than breaks you. We often underestimate how quickly these shifts can happen once the brain is no longer flooded with cheap stimuli. Within days of a true dopamine detox, people report noticing pleasures they had forgotten. The crispness of air in the morning, the satisfaction of finishing a task, the way silence feels like a warm space rather than a void to be filled. These are not new pleasures. They are ancient ones, always available, but drowned out. As the mind quiets, it begins to crave depth. The superficial loses its shine. The profound becomes magnetic. This is the tipping point where craving becomes a tool rather than a trap, where discipline flows not from effort, but from desire aligned with values. Sustaining motivation through identity and emotion. The final stage in rewiring the reward system is anchoring it, not just in behavior, but in identity. Habits that stick are not just things we do. They are expressions of who we believe we are. If you see yourself as someone who writes, then writing is not a task to be completed. It's part of how you engage with the world. If you see yourself as disciplined, then the act of choosing focus over distraction becomes congruent with your self-image. Identity is the deepest layer of habit formation, and it is shaped not just by repetition, but by emotion. Every time we follow through on a hard task and then reflect with pride or gratitude, we carve that identity a little deeper. We don't just remember the task. We remember how we felt about doing it. That emotional imprint becomes the glue that makes the habit stick. This is why reflection is so crucial in the detox process. It's not enough to avoid distractions. We must also celebrate alignment. We must reinforce not just behavior, but self-concept. Sustaining motivation then becomes less about pushing ourselves and more about nourishing the connection between who we are and what we do. This is where journaling, community, and storytelling come into play. When we write about our wins, however small, we're teaching the brain, this is who I am becoming. When we share our journey with others, we amplify the feedback loop. When we tell ourselves a coherent story of growth, I used to be distracted, now I am focused, we strengthen the neural path of change. Identity is a story told in action. Each choice is a sentence. Each habit is a paragraph. Over time, the story becomes so strong that falling out of alignment feels uncomfortable, not because of guilt, but because it no longer matches who we are. This is sustainable motivation, not effortful, not fragile, but rooted in a sense of self that craves integrity. There's also an emotional shift that comes with this new way of living. Whereas before, we may have sought stimulation to escape discomfort, we now begin to welcome challenge as an opportunity for growth. Dopamine no longer serves as a lure into distraction. It becomes a guidepost for purposeful action. We learn to delay gratification, not as a form of punishment, but because we have experienced the joy of earned reward. We trust ourselves to follow through, and that trust becomes a form of peace. When discipline is no longer about restriction, but about resonance with your highest self, then motivation is no longer something you chase. It is something that rises naturally, day after day, like breath. Chapter 11. Mastering Mental Clarity. Detoxing the inner noise. In a world that grows louder by the day, not just in sound, but in thoughts, demands, distractions, and micro-decisions, achieving mental clarity has become one of the rarest, yet most vital skills for any individual seeking deep work. The digital age has unleashed a tidal wave of stimuli that clutter our inner landscape. Notifications, background worries, incomplete tasks, open loops in our minds. All these small intrusions collectively erode our cognitive bandwidth and make it harder to focus, to think clearly, and to make sound decisions. This chapter is about confronting that mental chaos head-on and learning to restore order within. Mental clarity is not a passive experience. It is cultivated. It requires conscious detoxification of the noise we've come to accept as normal. While much of dopamine detox revolves around removing external triggers, mental clarity addresses the deeper layer. What happens in our internal world when we disconnect? It's about creating space, not just silence, and training the mind to return to the present moment with strength and intention. When we learn to clear mental clutter, we become capable of thinking in straight lines rather than spirals. We recover the ability to hold a single thought without it fragmenting under pressure. And perhaps most importantly, we begin to hear the quiet wisdom that has always been there, buried beneath the noise. Recognizing cognitive clutter and its sources. To master mental clarity, we must first understand what is clouding our minds in the first place. The modern brain is constantly juggling an overwhelming number of incomplete thoughts and unresolved fragments. We call these open loops. Any task or commitment we've thought about, but haven't yet completed, closed, or clarified. The moment we remember we need to reply to an email, call someone back, finish a report, pick up groceries, or check on a friend, our brain lights up with urgency. But if these tasks remain unaddressed or unmanaged, they linger in the background like tabs open on a computer. We may not consciously dwell on them every moment, but they drain processing power all the same. Then there are the heavier cognitive weights, things like unresolved conflicts, identity uncertainty, fear of failure, and regret. These don't just crowd our thoughts, they color them. They distort how we interpret the present and project the future. When our minds are filled with invisible tensions, we often mistake the noise for truth. We make reactive choices. We distract ourselves not because we're lazy, but because we're overwhelmed. Clarity begins by identifying these sources of inner noise, not to judge ourselves, but to become aware. Another culprit behind mental clutter is unregulated information intake. We have normalized the idea that we should consume hundreds of snippets of data daily. Headlines, tweets, texts, videos, posts, without recognizing that our brains are not designed to process and sort such volume without consequences. Information overload is not just about data, it's about decisions. Each piece of content triggers small reactions, comparisons, judgments, curiosity, doubt. Even if they are fleeting, they accumulate. When we never give our mind a chance to rest from consumption, we deny it the opportunity to digest, reflect, and make sense of what it already knows. Detoxing mental clutter requires us to reduce input, slow the stream, and protect the boundaries of our attention. When we become guardians of what enters our mental space, we begin to notice what thoughts are truly ours and what are just echoes of the world outside. Techniques for clearing and centering the mind. Once we understand what clutters the mind, the next step is to intentionally clear space. Mental clarity is both an art and a discipline. It requires tools and rituals that help us sift through the internal noise and anchor ourselves in the present. One of the most powerful and underutilized tools is the brain dump, the act of externalizing everything that is on your mind without filtering onto paper or digital note. The goal is not to organize immediately, but to unload. By getting thoughts out of our heads and into a visible form, we relieve the brain of the burden of holding them all at once. The relief is often immediate. Once the mind sees that it doesn't have to track every open loop, it can begin to relax. This is the first stage of clarity, removing the weight of holding. But clearing is not enough. We must also center. Centering the mind means training it to return to stillness and focus, even amidst distraction. Meditation is the most direct path to this. While often misunderstood as a purely spiritual practice, meditation is, in practical terms, a workout for attention. It is the gym for your mind. Sitting quietly, returning to breath, and observing thoughts without chasing them builds mental muscles we desperately need in a noisy world. Even 5 to 10 minutes a day of focused breath work can significantly reduce the static that clouds our thinking. The goal is not to eliminate thoughts, but to change our relationship with them. When we can observe a thought without being dragged by it, we regain agency. There are also physical tools that support mental clarity. Movement, for example, is not just good for the body, it resets the brain. A brisk walk in silence without headphones or input is often more powerful than an hour spent trying to think through a problem. Movement integrates thoughts. It allows the subconscious to surface insights without pressure. Sleep, too, is sacred for clarity. Inadequate sleep clouds memory, dulls focus, and makes emotional regulation harder. When we're tired, everything feels heavier, including our thoughts. Detoxing the mind is not just about practices, it's about lifestyle. Protecting our sleep, moving our bodies, reducing caffeine after a certain hour, and spending time in silence are not luxuries. They are requirements for a clear mind in a chaotic world. Creating a mental environment conducive to deep work. Just as we create physical environments for productivity, a tidy desk, a quiet room, a closed door, we must learn to design mental environments that support deep work. This means curating the emotional and cognitive context in which focus happens. The most important element of this environment is clarity of intention. When we begin a task without knowing exactly what success looks like, our brain fills the void with doubt, procrastination, or distraction. Before engaging in deep work, ask, what am I trying to achieve in this block of time? What does a successful outcome look like? This mental priming activates the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for goal-directed behavior, and gives the mind a target to lock onto. Beyond intention, we must cultivate a sense of psychological safety within ourselves. This means removing the inner critic from the room. Many people cannot enter deep work, not because they are distracted by external things, but because internally they are afraid of failure, judgment, or imperfection. These thoughts whisper from the shadows. What if it's not good enough? What if you fail again? Who do you think you are? These voices don't belong in the work session. They belong in therapy, reflection, or journaling, but not in the focused hours of creation. Creating mental clarity means telling yourself, this is not the time to judge. This is the time to act. You can evaluate later. For now, you create. We also enhance mental clarity by closing loops before we begin deep work. If you sit down to write while remembering you haven't replied to an important email, that email becomes background noise. One powerful habit is the 5-minute loop closure. Before your work block, take a few minutes to tie up loose ends or record them in a trusted system. It's not about doing everything, but about capturing it somewhere reliable so your brain knows it's safe to forget for now. Mental clarity thrives when the mind trusts itself to return later. Trust, in this context, is the foundation of focus. Finally, the mental environment for deep work includes emotion. Start your session with emotional alignment, not just logistical planning. Ask, how do I want to feel as I work? Curious, empowered, grounded. Then set a tiny ritual that evokes that feeling. A song, a breath, a visualization. Anchor your state, not just your schedule. When emotion and cognition align, clarity becomes effortless. The mind enters flow not by force, but by invitation. It feels safe, clear, and ready to dive deep. Chapter 12. Embracing the Void. Overcoming the Fear of Boredom and Rest. In the age of constant stimulation, where our brains are constantly fired up by the endless influx of digital information, the concept of boredom has become almost foreign. It has become synonymous with waste, with idle time, and with a lack of productivity. We've been taught to avoid boredom at all costs, to fill every gap with noise, entertainment, or a new task. However, the truth is that boredom is not a void to fear or avoid, but rather a fertile ground for creativity, reflection, and self-awareness. In this chapter, we will explore the importance of embracing boredom and rest as vital components of the dopamine detox journey. By learning to sit with discomfort, to detach from the constant barrage of stimuli, we unlock the power of the mind's natural ability to reset, to regain clarity, and to focus. Boredom is not an enemy, it is a teacher. It is in the absence of external distractions that we find the deepest well of our creativity, our purpose, and our connection to the present moment. When we step into the void and face the discomfort of boredom, we allow our mind to clear the clutter, our body to rest, and our spirit to recalibrate. It is in this space of stillness that our highest potential is realized, the neuroscience of boredom, a gateway to creativity. At first glance, boredom may seem like a sign of something wrong, a lack of engagement, a signal that we are not doing enough or not achieving enough. It is often dismissed as a negative feeling, something that arises when we are not being constantly entertained or stimulated. Yet, recent research in neuroscience suggests that boredom is a natural state of the brain, one that is actually essential for its long-term health and creativity. The brain is wired to crave novelty and stimulation, and when these are absent, we experience a feeling of emptiness, a desire for something to fill the gap. However, this empty space is not just a void, it is a moment of potential. When we allow ourselves to be bored, we create the conditions for our minds to wander, to daydream, and to explore ideas that we would never otherwise consider. This is the beginning of creative insight. Studies have shown that when we disengage from active tasks and allow our minds to rest, the brain enters a unique state of restfulness that promotes creative thinking and problem solving. This is known as the default mode network, a network of brain regions that becomes active when we are not focused on external tasks. When we step away from constant stimulation and embrace boredom, we activate this network, which allows our brains to process information in novel ways and make connections that were previously unnoticed. In other words, boredom is not a waste of time. It is a necessary precursor to creativity. The more we allow ourselves to be bored, the more we give our brains the space to generate new ideas, solutions, and insights that can drive our deep work forward. Embracing boredom, then, is not just about enduring a temporary discomfort. It is about tapping into the mind's natural ability to create, innovate, and problem solve. The fear of idleness. Breaking the addiction to constant productivity. For many of us, the very idea of being idle, of doing nothing, triggers a sense of discomfort or even fear. We live in a culture that glorifies busyness, where productivity is the ultimate measure of success. We are conditioned to believe that if we are not constantly busy, we are falling behind. There is a pervasive myth that rest is the enemy of progress, and that the only way to achieve great things is through relentless work and hustle. This belief is ingrained in our daily lives, from the way we schedule our time to the way we measure our worth. But in reality, this obsession with constant productivity is not sustainable. It is, in fact, counterproductive. The idea that we must always be doing something, checking our phones, answering emails, running errands, or working on projects, creates a cycle of perpetual stress and exhaustion that ultimately leads to burnout and decreased effectiveness. Rest, on the other hand, is a powerful tool for recharging the brain and body. It is only through rest that we can maintain our energy, focus, and creativity over the long term. Rest allows us to step back, to let go of the constant pressure to perform, and to recalibrate. However, the fear of idleness prevents many people from fully embracing rest. We feel guilty for taking breaks, for stepping away from our work, or for simply sitting with our thoughts. We are afraid that if we stop moving, we will lose momentum, fall behind, or miss out on opportunities. But this fear is rooted in a false belief. The truth is that rest is not the enemy of productivity. It is its foundation. Without rest, we cannot function at our highest capacity. Our brains need downtime to process information, consolidate memories, and make new connections. It is in the moments of stillness and inactivity that we give our minds the space to recharge and reset, allowing us to return to our work with greater focus, clarity, and creativity. The key is to break free from the addiction to constant productivity and embrace the power of idleness as a necessary and rejuvenating part of the deep work process. Rest and recovery, the pillars of sustainable deep work. Rest is not a luxury. It is a necessity. In the pursuit of deep work, it is easy to become consumed by the idea that the more we work, the more we accomplish. However, this mindset is unsustainable in the long run. Deep work requires sustained focus, energy, and creativity, all of which are fueled by adequate rest and recovery. The process of deep work is not a sprint. It is a marathon. In order to perform at our best, we have to give our bodies and minds the time they need to rest and recover. This includes not only physical rest, but mental and emotional recovery as well. Mental fatigue is just as real as physical fatigue, and it can only be alleviated through periods of rest and relaxation. One of the most effective ways to ensure we are properly rested is to incorporate regular breaks into our work routine. This can be as simple as taking a short walk every hour, practicing mindfulness or meditation, or engaging in a hobby that brings us joy. These breaks allow us to recharge and reset, so that when we return to our work, we are able to do so with renewed energy and focus. In addition to regular breaks, it is important to prioritize sleep as a key component of rest and recovery. Sleep is the body's natural recovery process, and it plays a critical role in brain function, memory consolidation, and emotional regulation. Without adequate sleep, our cognitive performance and decision-making abilities are significantly impaired. Prioritizing sleep is not just about getting enough hours of rest. It is about creating a sleep environment that supports deep, restorative sleep. This means minimizing distractions, reducing screen time before bed, and establishing a consistent sleep schedule. Another crucial aspect of recovery is mental recovery. This involves giving ourselves permission to disconnect from work and to engage in activities that allow our minds to relax and recharge. This can include reading, spending time in nature, or simply sitting quietly and reflecting. The key is to give ourselves permission to rest without guilt or anxiety, knowing that it is an essential part of the deep work process. Just as our bodies require sleep to function properly, our minds require rest to maintain clarity, creativity, and focus. Rest and recovery are not just about slowing down. They are about giving ourselves the space to grow, to reflect, and to return to our work with greater intention and energy. By embracing rest as a vital component of deep work, we can sustain our focus, creativity, and productivity for the long haul. Chapter 13. The Power of Intentional Focus, Cultivating Deep Work in a Distracted World. In today's world, distraction is everywhere. The constant pull of notifications, the lure of social media, the demands of emails, and the overwhelming amount of information we are exposed to daily create a perpetual state of fragmentation in our attention. We have become so accustomed to multitasking that we often forget what it feels like to focus deeply on a single task for an extended period. But it is in this deep focus, this immersion in a task without distraction, that the true power of human potential is realized. In this chapter, we will explore the transformative impact of intentional focus, the cultivation of deep work, and how you can reclaim your attention to achieve peak performance. Deep work is not merely about working hard. It's about working with intention, clarity, and purpose. It is the ability to resist distractions, to prioritize what truly matters, and to immerse yourself fully in the task at hand. When we enter a state of deep work, we are not just completing tasks. We are engaging in a profound cognitive process that allows us to reach the pinnacle of our abilities. This ability to focus with intent is what separates the exceptional from the ordinary, and it is what allows us to make significant strides in our personal and professional lives. The challenge, however, is that we live in a world that is designed to fragment our attention at every turn. Social media, constant notifications, and the pressure to do more in less time create an environment where deep focus is increasingly difficult to achieve. But the good news is that intentional focus is a skill that can be cultivated. With the right strategies and practices, we can train our brains to focus more deeply, for longer periods of time, and with greater clarity. This chapter will provide you with the tools and insights needed to reclaim your attention, cultivate a mindset of deep work, and achieve extraordinary results in an increasingly distracted world. The science of attention. How focus shapes our reality. At the heart of deep work lies the concept of attention. Attention is the gateway through which all information, all experiences, and all actions pass. The quality of our attention directly determines the quality of our work, our relationships, and our lives. Yet, attention is a finite resource, one that is easily depleted in a world full of distractions. Understanding the science of attention is crucial to cultivating the ability to focus deeply. Research in neuroscience has shown that the brain has a limited capacity for attention. When we are constantly bombarded by distractions, whether they are external, like phone notifications or background noise, or internal, such as racing thoughts or anxiety, our attention becomes fragmented and less effective. The more we split our attention between multiple tasks, the less cognitive resources we have available for each individual task. This is why multitasking, despite its appeal, is counterproductive. Studies have shown that multitasking reduces efficiency and impairs the quality of work. Our brains simply cannot focus on two complex tasks at the same time. Instead, when we attempt to multitask, we are switching back and forth between tasks, which increases the cognitive load and reduces the overall quality of our work. On the other hand, when we give our full attention to a single task, we tap into the brain's capacity for deep focus, allowing us to perform at our highest level. This state of focused attention is what allows us to achieve peak performance and enter a state of flow where time seems to disappear and we are fully immersed in the task at hand. But achieving this state requires intentional effort. It requires the ability to block out distractions, to resist the urge to check your phone or jump between tasks, and to commit fully to the present moment. The more we practice focused attention, the stronger our ability to concentrate becomes, and the more we can achieve in less time. The practice of deep work. How to cultivate uninterrupted focus. Deep work is not something that happens by accident. It is a deliberate practice, one that requires time, intention, and discipline. The first step in cultivating deep work is creating the right environment, one that minimizes distractions and supports sustained focus. This means setting aside a specific time and space for deep work, free from the interruptions of emails, phone calls, and social media. The more you can remove external distractions, the easier it becomes to enter a state of deep focus. In addition to managing external distractions, it is important to address internal distractions, the thoughts and worries that constantly pull our attention away from the task at hand. One of the most effective strategies for doing this is mindfulness. By practicing mindfulness meditation, you can train your brain to become more aware of your thoughts and feelings, allowing you to notice when your attention has wandered and gently guide it back to the present moment. This practice of mindfulness is not just about relaxation. It is about cultivating the ability to direct your attention with precision and clarity. Another key element of deep work is setting clear, specific goals for each session. When you have a clear sense of what you want to achieve, it is much easier to stay focused and resist the urge to check your phone or get distracted by irrelevant tasks. By breaking down larger projects into smaller, manageable tasks, you create a sense of structure and direction that keeps you on track. This approach also helps to reduce the feeling of overwhelm that can often arise when faced with a large, complex project. When you focus on one small task at a time, you create momentum and make steady progress toward your larger goal. The practice of deep work is not something that can be mastered overnight. It takes time, patience, and consistent effort. But as you continue to practice, you will find that your ability to focus deepens and your capacity for producing high-quality work increases. The key is to stay committed to the process, even when it feels challenging or uncomfortable. By embracing the practice of deep work, you set yourself on a path to achieving your fullest potential, both personally and professionally. Overcoming distractions. Strategies for maintaining focus in a noisy world. One of the greatest challenges to deep work is the constant barrage of distractions that we face every day. Whether it's the temptation to check social media, the ping of a new email, or the pressure of a deadline, distractions are a constant presence in our lives. But while it may seem impossible to eliminate distractions entirely, there are strategies you can use to minimize their impact and maintain focus. The first step is to recognize the sources of distraction in your environment and take proactive steps to reduce or eliminate them. This might mean turning off notifications on your phone, closing unnecessary browser tabs, or using apps that block distracting websites during deep work sessions. Creating a physical space that is conducive to deep work is also essential. This might involve setting up a designated workspace that is free from clutter, noise, or other distractions. By creating a space that is dedicated solely to focused work, you signal to your brain that this is a time for concentration, not for distractions. In addition to managing external distractions, it is important to address internal distractions as well. This includes dealing with the mental chatter that often arises during deep work sessions. One effective technique for managing these internal distractions is the 2-minute rule. When you notice a distracting thought or urge, whether it's the desire to check your email, think about something unrelated, or even just a feeling of anxiety, commit to allowing yourself to deal with it only for 2 minutes. Set a timer and allow yourself to engage with the thought or distraction for that brief period. Once the timer goes off, return to your work. This technique helps to reduce the power that distractions have over you, while also giving you a brief moment to acknowledge and release them. Another powerful strategy for maintaining focus is to use the Pomodoro technique, a time management method that involves working in focused 25-minute intervals followed by short breaks. This technique helps to maintain momentum and energy while preventing burnout. By working in short, focused bursts, you can sustain deep concentration for longer periods of time while giving your mind the opportunity to rest and recharge during breaks. Finally, it is important to practice self-compassion. Deep work is challenging, and it's natural for your mind to wander or for distractions to arise. Rather than berating yourself for losing focus, simply notice when it happens and gently bring your attention back to the task at hand. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to stay focused and resist the pull of distractions. Chapter 14. Mastery through consistency. Achieving lasting transformation. At the heart of every great achievement lies one simple truth. Mastery is not an event, but a process. It is a journey, one that requires relentless consistency, patience, and dedication. In the pursuit of deep work and a dopamine detox, the final step toward transformation is not a sudden leap, but a steady, incremental commitment to change. This is what separates those who merely dabble in improvement from those who achieve true, lasting transformation. The ability to create a life of deep work, a life where focus, creativity, and clarity flow effortlessly, comes not from intense bursts of effort, but from the disciplined, daily practice of consistency. In this final chapter, we will explore the power of consistency in achieving lasting transformation. We will uncover the practical strategies you can use to turn deep work from an occasional activity into a way of life, one that allows you to produce extraordinary results while maintaining your well-being. The key to mastery in any field, whether it be creative work, professional success, or personal growth, is not just about working harder or smarter, but about working consistently, day in and day out. It's about embracing the process of growth, understanding that true progress comes in small, deliberate steps rather than monumental leaps. And as you make consistency your guiding principle, you will find that the results of deep work are not only sustainable, but cumulative, building over time into something greater than the sum of its parts. The challenge lies in making this transformation permanent, in turning the insights, skills, and habits gained through your dopamine detox into a lifelong practice that becomes an integral part of your identity. This final chapter will guide you through the steps of creating lasting change, overcoming the inevitable obstacles that arise, and turning deep work into a way of life that is not just productive, but deeply fulfilling. The compound effect of small, consistent actions. In our fast-paced world, where we are constantly searching for quick fixes and immediate results, it can be easy to overlook the power of small, consistent actions. We are conditioned to expect rapid transformations, to seek the shortcut to success. But the truth is that the most significant and lasting results come not from grand gestures, but from the steady accumulation of small, purposeful actions taken consistently over time. This is the compound effect, the idea that small efforts, repeated consistently, lead to exponential results. In the context of deep work, this means showing up every day, even when you don't feel like it, and making the decision to focus your attention on what matters most. It means committing to the process, not just the outcome, and trusting that every small action is contributing to your larger goals. The compound effect works on a psychological level as well. When we commit to small, consistent actions, we build momentum. This momentum creates a positive feedback loop where each success, no matter how small, reinforces our belief in our ability to succeed. This is a crucial part of developing a deep work habit. The more you practice focused work, the easier it becomes to enter a state of deep concentration. Over time, the practice becomes less of a struggle and more of a natural rhythm. But this transformation doesn't happen overnight. It requires commitment and the willingness to endure moments of doubt and frustration. However, as you continue to show up each day and engage in deep work, you will begin to notice the compound effect taking shape in your life. The results will become undeniable, not only in terms of your output, but in your level of focus, creativity, and overall well-being. The key is to be patient with the process, to trust that every small effort is leading you closer to mastery. Consistency is not about perfection. It is about persistence. By embracing the compound effect of small actions, you will see that the most profound transformations happen gradually, with each small step building on the last. Over time, these small efforts will accumulate into something truly remarkable. Turning deep work into a habit. The power of rituals and routines. The power of consistency in deep work lies not just in sporadic bursts of effort, but in the creation of rituals and routines that make deep work a natural part of your daily life. Habits and routines are the scaffolding that support consistent action, and by turning deep work into a habit, you ensure that it becomes an integral part of your day, regardless of external circumstances. Creating a ritual around deep work allows you to establish a predictable structure that primes your mind for focus and concentration. The first step in creating a deep work habit is to identify a specific time and space for your work. This could mean setting aside the first hour of your day, or carving out a few hours in the evening when you are least likely to be interrupted. By making deep work a non-negotiable part of your schedule, you create a sense of structure that signals to your brain that it is time to focus. But beyond scheduling, the key to turning deep work into a habit is to create a ritual around it. Rituals are the small, deliberate actions that signal the start of focused work. These could include a specific pre-work routine, such as making a cup of tea, taking a few minutes to meditate, or reviewing your goals for the day. These rituals serve as a mental trigger that tells your brain it is time to shift into deep work mode. Over time, these rituals become ingrained in your routine, making it easier to slip into a state of deep focus without resistance. Another key element of building a deep work habit is setting clear, achievable goals. The more specific and measurable your goals are, the easier it is to stay motivated and focused. This means breaking down larger projects into smaller, actionable tasks and celebrating small wins along the way. By tracking your progress, you create a sense of accomplishment that reinforces the habit and builds momentum. But perhaps the most important aspect of making deep work a habit is consistency. It's easy to commit to deep work for a day, a week, or even a month, but the real challenge is in making it a permanent part of your life. This requires showing up every day, even when it feels difficult, or when you would rather do something else. The more consistently you engage in deep work, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, the act of focusing becomes effortless, and the benefits of deep work, heightened creativity, greater productivity, and a deeper sense of fulfillment, become woven into the fabric of your daily life. By turning deep work into a habit, you ensure that it becomes a sustainable long-term practice that propels you toward your highest potential. Overcoming setbacks, building resilience, and staying committed. The path to mastery is not a straight line. It is full of setbacks, obstacles, and moments of doubt. There will be days when your focus feels elusive, when distractions seem insurmountable, or when you feel like giving up. These moments are inevitable, but they do not define your journey. What matters is not the setbacks themselves, but how you respond to them. Resilience is the key to maintaining consistency in the face of challenges. When you encounter obstacles, it's important to view them as opportunities for growth, rather than as signs of failure. Resilience is about accepting the inevitable ups and downs of life and staying committed to your goal despite them. One of the most powerful tools for building resilience is self-compassion. Instead of beating yourself up when things don't go as planned, treat yourself with kindness and understanding. Recognize that setbacks are a normal part of the process and that every failure is an opportunity to learn and improve. Another key to overcoming setbacks is to stay focused on your why, the deeper purpose behind your commitment to deep work. When you are clear on your purpose, it becomes easier to stay motivated and to push through the inevitable challenges. Whether your goal is to create a meaningful project, to deepen your relationships, or to achieve professional success, Reminding yourself of why you are engaging in deep work will help you stay grounded and focused. Finally, it's important to celebrate progress, no matter how small. Every step forward, every moment of focus, and every breakthrough is a victory that deserves to be acknowledged. By celebrating your progress, you build a sense of momentum and reinforce the habit of deep work. The path to lasting transformation is not without its challenges, but by building